When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. This episode is going to be a little bit different. Excuse me. This episode is going to be a little bit different. The guys from Sword and Staff podcast, Josh and Ritchie, they invited me to come over to their show, to sit in their studio and record a session with them about Appalachian Cryptids. And it turned out great. It was a fun episode. I know I sound down in the dumps, but we got stuff going on otherwise. But I don't want that to take away from this episode. I started to skip doing an intro altogether, but I wanted to explain. When you hear Sword and Staff podcast kick on, it's a little bonus for you guys that I just wanted to share with you. So Josh and Ritchie have total control of this episode. It's their episode. They shared the file with me. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Sword and Staff. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Robinson, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host,
Sketchy Ritchie.
No, my friend. You're not Sketchy Ritchie today.
If you say it, you're getting punched.
You're Slick Rick.
No, absolutely not. That's not a thing.
I'm just messing with him. But on today's episode, we have a special guest and one of our friends in the studio today. Bo, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody your podcast and just all of that.
All right. Guys, I'm Bo Kennedy. I'm the host of the Bump Podcast. Bump is an acronym, stands for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks to Josh and Ritchie for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're happy to have you. And Bo, I remember the first time I think that I talked to Bo and I learned that he was actually in the same town.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
That was wild.
You're here? So I was kind of mind blown by that. And but we had the opportunity to talk with Bo several times, and he actually contributed some stuff to Dark Holler, some research there. And I saw Bo, I was like, whoa, I didn't know Bo was in here. And so that was really cool. But on today's edition of the Sword and Staff, we got the gang together to have a conversation on Appalachian Cryptids. So it's our October Spooky Month series that we're doing. We always try to save our craziest, spookiest content for this month. This is the month where we get a ton of listens and people tune in because everybody's wanting spooky stuff, right?
Yep.
And last year, you all showed up in a big way during the month of October. You all put us on the iTunes charts for the very first time. And thanks so much for that. That was a year ago. But yeah, still, thanks so much for that. We're hoping we do the same thing this year and that Bo gets to be a part of that as well. So let's dive into the conversation, fellas. Let's talk about
first, before we dive into anything, We're talking about how spooky month is.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at something a little bit more spooky than spooky month right now.
Yeah, I'm sitting
Do you
here.
want to explain to the people?
Everybody already
what I'm
knows.
seeing?
Everybody knows my style. Everybody
They haven't
knows,
seen it, though.
Everybody knows that I'm sitting
Yeah.
here covered up with a with a big, large blanket, looking at these guys. I'm always trying to get our audio right. Just because Ritchie and Bo are sharing a mic today, I don't want their audio to bleed over too much onto my microphone, and that's more work for me later on down the road. And I'm in a hurry. So,
At least we're not sharing a blanket.
at least
I mean,
they are sharing
given
a
his
mic.
way, we probably would have been.
They are sharing a mic. They are not sharing a blanket. So I'm not a podcast tyrant. So
I mean,
that's to be determined, I guess.
but the blanket days of evil are over today.
That's true.
As of today.
Yeah, today will be
They're
the last
done.
one. Yeah. Yeah, we bought some like little isolating audio, like almost like miniature audio.
They're like little
booths.
sound booths.
Yeah, little sound
Yeah.
booths, and so we'll be using those starting next week. And so hopefully that just adds another improvement to the audio quality moving forward.
And we're being clear. It's the little sound booths and no blankets on top of that.
I've really grown accustomed to the blanket.
No.
I mean, it's very
You get-
comfortable.
you get
makes
one
me
or the
feel,
other.
Makes me feel safe. I mean, what else could you want?
I guess.
All right, guys. Well, let's get into today's conversation because we are going to have an uncut section at the end of this. We are going to talk about, for the very first time, some of the project that we are planning on working on with Ward Heine. We'll get into some more details about that whenever Ward gets on the podcast here at the end of the month. But we're going to be releasing a teaser. Before that podcast, we'll talk about it more in depth, and we've got Bo in the house. We've talked about it a little bit with him, shared some of what we're doing. He thinks it's cool. So we're going to talk about some of it with him after this episode. And so if you're wanting that content, you're going to head on over to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/sword and staff order. Just $5 a month. You can get that bonus content. You can hear that conversation that nobody else is going to hear. And Bo will have a copy of that for his podcast as well. So let's get into the conversation, boys. Let's talk about Appalachian Cryptids. Where y'all want to start?
Wherever you want to start with.
Let's
Whatever
start.
one.
Let's start
Let's
with
start
what
with the
everybody
MVP.
knows. Let's start with what everybody knows. Are we going to have a battle for MVP supremacy?
No, there is only one.
Bo doesn't like that. Okay.
There is only one.
I know Bo is a big time fan of Flatwoods.
I am a Flatwoods guy.
Now,
but
if we're speaking of high strangeness,
Yeah.
we'll absolutely Flatwoods Monster is the king. But just like the overall sort of well-known cryptid of West Virginia, it's got to be the Mothman.
let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's start with
Let's do
Mothman
it.
then. All right. Let's start with Mothman. So let's kind of talk about Mothman. Well, that's a word that I like. In West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is kind of viewed as this humanoid creature, right? It kind of looks mannish, right?
Yep.
But it's also very moth-like, right? And if I'm not mistaken, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the first reports actually reported Mothman as the Birdman. if
Yeah,
I'm not
the
mistaken.
sightings pre sort of high strangeness flap that went through the area where the Mothman came from. There were sightings of a being they called the Birdman. So
Okay. All right. And
that's
so
the same ones the guys were digging the graves when they saw it.
Yes, and it was brown.
Yeah.
Up in the trees above them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. So that's pre Mothman. That's pre Silver Bridge collapse. All of
Yeah.
that. Okay. The big time sighting that we all know about, if I'm not mistaken, is November 15th, 1966 to the area of December 15th, 1967. So for over a year. The very first newspaper, the Point Pleasant Register, titled an article, "Couple Sees a Man-Sized Bird Creature Something."
Something.
And then eventually after that, National Press kind of picks up on reports and they spread the story across the U.S. Also, the Mothman, he gets introduced to a much, much wider audience through the work of Gray Barker. I'm trying to think of the book that Gray Barker had. It was The Silver Bridge. Is that what it was called?
I'm almost certain it was the Silver
I'm
Bridge.
pretty sure it was called The Silver Bridge. That was my dryer.
It's time to fight. That's a boxing ring.
The bell has rung. Mothman and Flatwoods Monster are going to battle it out now. But really, Mothman finds his popularity with John Keel in his 1970 book, The Mothman Prophecies, right? That's, basically Keel writes that book, And, basically he talks about supernatural events related to the sightings, and then not just the sightings, but also the collapse of the Silver Bridge, right? That gets picked up in a film later on, I think it's 2002, called The Mothman Prophecies. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, I had always heard of, Mothman growing up. It's West Virginia folklore. Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is, the people in Ireland.
Like, you're going to come in the house, you're going to get carried off by the Mothman.
Like, people in Ireland have their folklore about the fairies. Right. In West Virginia, you have the folklore about the Mothman. Right? But the first time that it really kind of came into my mind, and I actually thought about it, was whenever I saw the movie in 2002. I was like, whoa, like this is...
whoa, this is in my backyard.
Wow. I had no clue that there was a bridge that fell and that Mothman, so after that, my dad claimed to see the Mothman once, and, he called me once, actually. He had dropped me off at my grandmother's house, and then he got to Madison, which is just down the road where our church is at. He's like, "You're not going to believe what I saw." I was like, "What?" He said, "I saw the Mothman, and he shot straight up into the air. It was just above your grandmother's house."
He needs to be on my show.
I was going to say.
I'm going to have my dad on the bump.
Please do it.
Yeah. So, so Dad, if you're listening, get you some airtime. We got you a show to go on. But I don't know. Okay, I don't want to take up all the time here. You guys can also talk about Mothman and some of the stuff you all know about Mothman. I know that Ritchie, you can speak to this a little bit more. There is some connection there with some other high strangeness in the area, right? With things like injured cold, stuff like that. I don't know if you want to kind of bring that into the picture and kind of tell the story a little bit about all of the high strangeness flap that happened in Point Pleasant. Bo, you can feel free to chime into that as well. But let's talk about that a little bit. Kind of give some people an overview of the story of the other events surrounding the sightings of the Mothman.
If you read the book Mothman Prophecies, the actual entity, or whatever you want to call it, Mothman, he's like almost a footnote in the book.
Yep.
He lasts for a couple of chapters, and then it goes on to all this other high strangeness. John Keel kind of wanted to link Mothman with an ultra-terrestrial type thing. He gave it, and even to the Garuda, which is an Indian bird god, which goes into, bird deities.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That link. That's fascinating.
It's pretty cool stuff. But yeah, there was tons of stuff going on in this flap. UFOs everywhere. There was a being supposedly like hovering over an apartment or over a playground or something. You might know something about that one. He had like silver shimmery clothes, his long flowing hair.
Oh yeah, it was some sort of like, they described it almost like an angel, like an angelic visitation.
Hanging out right there.
I remember that. Yeah.
Around.
Wait, where was this at?
Point Pleasant.
It's in Point Pleasant.
Was this was in the same flap?
Yeah. Same year.
Wow. No, I've never heard of that.
It was people were calling it like a messianic vision. Like they described it as being like an angel or something.
A striking angel.
Well, the shining part too is a fascinating connection. Maybe I'll tie that in a little bit later on, but that's really interesting.
I mean, the lights in the heavens.
That's what I was about to say.
Into it.
Lights in the heavens. Angelic beings being related to stars and the shining lights, and cherubim and being burning ones, and
we literally made those connections back on our spiritual beings episode we did on UFOs.
Yeah, wow, I did not know that. That makes that case even more fascinating. So, okay, let's talk about a little bit more of the high strangeness. So I didn't know that, but let's talk about injured cold a little bit, right? Because injured cold connects into this as well.
Do we talk about historical injured cold, or
let's talk about historical injured cold?
Internet meme injured cold.
Let's talk about historical injured cold, and then we can move out a little further from there.
Woody Derenberger sighting.
Yep. Yeah, start there.
Go for it.
You go for it.
You started out.
Well, I don't have dates here in front of me.
We don't need the dates. Just set the scene where it happened. The initial sighting.
Woodrow Derenberger is on. Is that 60? It's not 64.
It's outside Parkersburg.
I can't remember what highway that is. But anyway, Woodrow Derenberger, he's driving home from work?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah. But he's driving home late at night, and as he's driving, which we talked about this a little bit in the Fire in the Sky episode we did. So it's kind of fresh. But he was driving home, and then as he's driving home, there is like this craft that basically is
literally
haunted.
descends and lands in front of him on the highway.
Right. And that area is actually kind of a famous place. Like, people stop there at that mile marker.
Yeah. Did you see the link I sent to you all in the group chat today? It's an updated version of the UFO sightings in West Virginia.
No, I've not had a chance to look at that.
If you look, the Parkersburg area absolutely dominates the list.
Really?
Even back like 60s, 50s. It's a list that goes back even to like the 30s on there. So you need to check it out when you get on there.
Okay. I will check that out. This craft lands in the highway, and a being comes out, and he speaks telepathically to Woodrow Derenberger. He said, if I'm not mistaken, he says he never saw his mouth moving.
Yeah.
All he saw was him grinning.
Yeah. Right. That's where the grinning man sort of meme comes from. It's based in that sighting.
Yeah. And he asks Derenberger, what are you called?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what your name is, it's what are you called? And, he kind of introduces himself, and he's like, I'm not here to hurt you, that kind of thing. But, there are meetings that happen with Derenberger and Indrid Cold after that event. Like, apparently, like, they almost become, like, acquaintances.
Yes.
And,
that what are you called theme, that's something that Betty and Barney Hill even experienced in their abduction. And we even had a patron come forward with a story about a dream that his wife had about this angelic presence that even asked her, told her, what are you called, when it introduced itself to her. Yeah. So that's a weird sort of connecting point.
Yeah. Okay. So this was a part of the Mothman flap.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just Mothman. You also had Indrid Cold, and then you had other stuff too, anomalous type beings like the MIB, the Men in Black.
Men in Black.
And I'm not talking the Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones Men in Black. I'm talking about humanoids who pose as government entities, I guess you could call them, who, while this flap was happening in Point Pleasant, they are going around town telling people, don't be talking about this, that kind of stuff, kind of stifling conversation on it. And, like, everybody's account of them, especially if you're reading Kill and stuff like that, is like, they're not quite human. Like, they're something else. Right. So I don't know if you guys have got anything else you want to add to that, but...
Not right off the bat. I know that they were in town and they would threaten Keel's partner. She was a journalist.
The lady, yeah.
I forgot what her name is.
Yeah.
It's like right on the tip of my tongue, but she's the one that started getting really threatened by them at first.
Didn't she pass away here recently, or is she still alive?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I know even of the initial sightings.
She worked for the newspaper in Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember her name, but I remember I remember her, and that's part of the story. Yeah. Interesting connection points here. Let me weave this in a little bit with some mythological stuff, because we're going to have various people listening to this episode. we're going to have crowd who are here for the paranormal cryptid stuff. And then we're going to have people who also tune in our podcast for the mythological stuff, because we deal with that a lot too. In this area, there was also a heavy Native American population. If you were to go to Point Pleasant today, there is a stone that is carved in the form of a ziggurat, and it's called the Water Panther Stone. It's right there at the Indy. It's something like that.
Yep.
Park, right there on the kind of corner of Point Pleasant where the rivers are at. And there's a water panther carved on it, which is a Native American spiritual being. But the leader of the clan that was there was named Chief Cornstalk. Okay? Chief Cornstalk was the father of a Native American who died right here in Logan County named Princess Aracoma. And I have a book here in front of me called Early Native Americans in West Virginia, the Fort Ancient Culture. And it's a survey of Fort Ancient Culture Indian works here. And apparently, from what I understand, there is a mythological bird being that goes back to Native American mythology. And actually, here in downtown Logan, Bo, we were talking about this before we came on the podcast.
Right.
They tore down a hotel there called the Aracoma Hotel, right? Yes. And what was the story with that?
If I remember correct, I might get a couple numbers wrong.
That's okay.
But when they tore down the Aracoma Hotel, which that means there was already a structure there.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. When they tore that out and they put in a new state building, for people to go pay to get their WIC stamps or child support payments or whatever. It's a big building downtown. When they were moving all the stuff out to build that foundation, they came across, I can't remember, Josh, if it was 13 or 35. It was, I want to say it was like 3 dozen. It was close to 35 graves in that area. And along with pottery and stuff like that, it was a mass grave of Native Americans, Shawnee, I believe.
Yes, it was.
So they removed those, and there was nowhere offered up around this area to reinter these bones. So there was a club, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the exact name of them. There was a group from New York that came down and claimed the remains and took them back up there to their property.
Okay. And
just that sort of rejection and like the way that the locals treated the remains of the natives, that's a catalyst for a curse that's similar to what you see in Point Pleasant with Cornstalk.
Cornstalk's curse. Whenever
putting the curse on the town,
right? Which people believe relates to the Mothman.
Still, even so many more parallels now with Aracoma and Point Pleasant.
Well, I've got this book here, and the remains were given to the Seneca Nation in New York, and interestingly, most of the burials were extended and articulated with their heads oriented towards the east. There's some theological significance to that, at least biblically. Man was exiled east of Eden, right? And whenever Israel had their tabernacle and their temple, you entered into it from that same direction as well. And so there's almost like a trace memory there in that culture. And you can get into many reasons perhaps why there is that trace memory there. Perhaps there was these people migrated from one continent to another from the Babel event, and maybe a land bridge got covered up or something and divided the continents. But it seems that there's a trace memory there in that culture. But here's the point I wanted to get to. Whenever they were looking at the remains, it says another individual, an infant, was buried with a marine shell gorget engraved with a Birdman motif on his/her torso. This is the only instance of this type of gorget reported so far in West Virginia. So you have connections there with this Birdman in Native American mythology that connects geographically to Point Pleasant, because Aracoma's father was there. He's buried in Point Pleasant, which connects us to the place where the Mothman was at, who was initially reported as a bird or something.
All of these layers with that initial connection.
That's right.
Between bloodlines, even paranormal activity. It's really deep stuff.
Also, the reporter for the Athens Register, was that
the Athens Messenger?
The Athens
I think
Messenger
that's what it is. That's Mary Hire.
Mary Hire.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was the one who was working with John Keel. Okay. All right. So some interesting stuff there with the Mothman. But let's move on to some others. Let's talk about the next one.
So you've never seen the Men in Black in Point Pleasant?
No, I can't say that I have. I've seen Will Smith.
And I can't say that and I can't say that I haven't.
Ooh.
Do you remember?
I remember you showing me pictures.
Showing you pictures of and what happened that weekend.
I remember you showing me pictures because you used to go to Point Pleasant pretty frequently.
Now, odds are this dude was probably some sketchy, like, we're going to call him an alien drug dealer, but
an alien drug dealer.
There was something going on. Like, he followed us around. Like, thematically, he was wearing all black, had a black, like, beanie, like a black tracksuit.
Yep.
And he literally followed us around the whole weekend. We asked people in town. The people in town said they don't recall seeing anybody like that. They don't know anybody like that. The cops weren't aware of anybody lurking around the town like that. But literally, we would go to the TNT area and hike around, and he's there in a black truck, parked at the end watching us. We go to downtown Point Pleasant, and he's there hiking along the park and the flood wall. 3 o'clock in the morning, I get up, and I go to the hotel. We were staying at the Low Hotel. And I go and I look out the window towards the river, and I look down, and under the streetlight, looking up at my window, is this same guy in all black.
That's fascinating.
He shows up the minute we're down in town, start asking people about the Mothman, and then he shows up and is following us the whole weekend. So I can't say that I haven't had an experience with the Men in Black, but whatever that guy was, he fits the bill.
All right, so let's talk about the next one that is very, very well known here in West Virginia, and that's the Flatwoods Monster.
Yep.
Okay, so
the true king of high strangeness.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the Flatwoods Monster case is actually called the first true high strangeness flap kind of in America, if I'm not mistaken. So, Bo, I know that you are a big time fan of Flatwoods Monster. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the story of the Flatwoods Monster and just kind of how that transpired.
Sure. Trying to not look at my notes here, but it was September 12th, 1952. A fireball, I guess for lack of better words, was seen going across the sky in the small town of Flatwoods in Braxton County, West Virginia. It crashed into this hill. Kids were outside playing around. They noticed this crash. It was the May family mainly, if I'm not mistaken. It was the Mays. 3 or 4 kids, I think. They had there was an older guy, maybe 19, 20 years old from the National Guard home visiting, and one of their mothers. They all decided to go up there on this hill and looked at this crash site to see what was going on. You know, they thought maybe a plane had crashed or something like that. They get up there, and there is this being, I want to say like 9 or 10 feet tall, kind of robotic, kind of reptilian maybe. This huge spade-shaped head kind of floating off the ground. Some kind of noxious gas.
Yeah.
You know, emanating from underneath. A lot of oil-looking substance are on the ground.
Yeah, I remember the greasy substance on the ground in the report. Yeah.
They freak out, run out of there. I believe the dog gets sick.
Yeah.
Did
they have some eye irritation?
They all had eye irritation, conjunctivitis, I think it was.
That's right. Yep.
Interesting carryover to the Mothman Prophecies movie too.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
This got reported. It was taken very seriously. They had the actual Project Blue Book.
I was going to say
came in and checked out this instance. The FBI was there. I think it was either the National Guard or Active Duty Army. I can't remember which one, but they came in and cleared the area, and they eventually ruled it out. You know, they tried to rule it out, saying it was an owl in a tree. Is what the Project
always
Blue
the
Book
owl
said.
symbolism when it comes to things around
which
here.
is
a bird.
Which is, right. Which is also interesting too,
Right.
because an owl symbolically is related to it's a being that flies in the sky, but at night, and it attacks other animals. So it does have some symbolic.
Well, in occult symbolism, it symbolizes high strangeness, the paranormal, the spiritual realm. So those sightings are always tied and linked together.
And a kind of even a kind of keeper of dark veiled knowledge. Because think about it symbolically, right? Like it's dark.
Yeah.
Right? Dark is things that are veiled. They're hard to see, right? And so owls are. That's why they're pictured as symbols for occult knowledge and secret things and veiled knowledge, right? Esoteric type things. And so it's still even it's kind of interesting that it's still yet somewhat there's still yet something there that's symbolically related. And Ritchie has shown me a video of us, I think, going around the mountain where this event happened while we were in Flatwoods.
Literally at the place where all this stuff happened. Yeah. In Flatwoods. Okay. One of our expeditions there.
Let me ask you all, was there any other events that happened around that one, or was that the only one?
Yes, Frametown. I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't really know a whole lot about that, but there was something else interesting with Flatwoods. So there is a flight path that you can track this crash. It went through several states. It was spotted that night.
Yeah, that's right. It was spotted through several states. Yeah. Oh gosh, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Flatwoods also a big time hotspot for Bigfoot sightings?
Big time hotspot.
And not only that, it has one of the most famous sort of paranormal locations like in the country with the Heyman House.
Yes, Sutton.
Sitting right there in Sutton. So it has a lot of interesting paranormal threads that run through it that goes beyond like cryptids and things too.
Richie, tell us about a being that you came across the other day in UK folklore that was very similar to Flatwoods Monster. Because they talk about the Flatwoods Monster being almost mechanical, right? and that's.
Wow. Are we really going to get into...
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I mean, we're extending out of Appalachia here, but there's a parallel here, and I'm going to make a point with it later on.
I thought you was going to save this one for, if we're thinking about the same one, for a solid episode on it.
Oh, we can do a solid episode on it later on.
You got to give me a second to find it.
Well, while you do that, I'm going to connect in Bigfoot to some more mythological stuff here.
Let's do
it. Here we go with Native American stuff. In Native American folklore and mythology, there is a being that is seen very parallel to Bigfoot. I can't remember what it's called. It's not the Yowie. We talked about this a while back, Ritchie. It has a Native American name. I can't remember, but it's like this spirit of the woods that's out there, and it does the knockings and the things like that, and it's kind of this keeper of the woods, right? Okay. So there even is a parallel to Bigfoot in Native American mythology. In these beings that we're talking about here, again, so this is kind of bridging the gap here between the paranormal and the mythological. These types of beings seem to have been things that people have been encountering for a very long time. We just give different names to them.
You're talking about the Yahoo.
I think that's it. It's not the Yahoo. What was it? Yowie.
I'll sit there. Yowie, the Yoo-hoo, something like that.
I was about to call it the Yowie, and I was like, no, that's not the Yowie.
Daniel Boone claimed to have shot one.
Really?
Yes, I have his journal. I got a copy of his journal at the house.
Yeah.
And he claims to have shot a Yahoo, and he talked about like it was just any of his other adventures. Didn't make a big deal out of it.
It's just another day.
It's just something that's there.
I just shot this hairy man out here, and
it's just another day.
Just another day in the office in the woods.
Yeah.
Capping Yahoos.
That's
capping Yahoos.
That's fascinating. Okay. All right. So Flatwoods is a place that has high strangeness associated with it, just like Point Pleasant. And this happened like a decade, I think it was, before the Point Pleasant flat.
About 15 years, yeah.
About 15 years. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
Sutton's really clung on to that. I hate to interrupt.
No.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Sutton, they have the Heyman House. It's an attraction.
Yeah.
You can set up tours. They had the Bigfoot Museum out there, and they had the Flatwoods Monster Museum out there. So they've really capitalized on this, and I wish our area would do that.
Yeah, I'll do. Yeah. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit.
But
towards the end, because some of the work that we're doing ties into some of this.
When you look at the high strangeness flap itself, and especially with Mothman or Flatwoods Monster, there's this build-up sort of climax release when it comes to these sightings. Like you have UFO sightings and apparition sightings and things like that that come before this major sighting of like Mothman. Like before the Mothman himself was being seen, there was UFOs seen in town. Yes. There was abduction of animals and things like that. The same thing with the Flatwoods Monster. Before this experience with the Flatwoods Monster itself, the people in town were reporting fireballs in the sky, UFOs that preceded this apparition. So there's that same pattern of high strangeness, and you can take it to the United Kingdom. Are you wanting to get into...
Yeah, 100%. Okay. That's actually what I was looking for.
But later on in the 70s in the United Kingdom, they had their own sort of...
Flatwoods Monster. Let's talk about that.
It was...
Bo was like, what?
Yeah. It was in May of 1973.
So same with the... It's like
within
right
the same parameters, yeah.
It's kind of in between Flatwoods Monster and Mothman.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's Isle of Wight or Isle of Man. It's one of the two. But they call you can Google it online. It's called the Sandown Clown.
Oh yes.
Have you heard of it?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
When you get into the specifics of this sighting, there are so many parallels to Flatwoods Monster that it's shocking. When Ward was actually telling me about it not too long ago, that's the first time I've ever heard of it. But even if you look at what they mean when they say high strangeness, that there's a spiritual aspect to the sighting itself.
And there's multiple phenomena occurring at the same time.
Flatwoods Monster was the first American version of this, but in the UK, the Sandown Clown is like their Flatwoods Monster. Like even down to with Flatwoods Monster, it's described as being mechanical, spiritual, all at one time.
Right.
The Sandown Clown is literally the same thing. It had mechanical aspects. Even the girl, one of the kids that saw it, talked about it being very mechanical, but also she asked it point blank, like, "Are you a ghost?" Like she said, there was something spiritual, ethereal about it.
What was it? He said something. It was like yes but no.
Yeah, it was basically his version of yes but no. It was like you would understand me in the parameters of a ghost, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So,
but they go into like a shed or a building that's like out in the woods.
it's like a windowless metal building, like similar to, I guess it's the UK's version of a flying saucer at the time.
Yeah. And then it's like metal whenever they go in, like the floor is like metal, and then like they go back, they leave, and then they go back and it's gone.
Yeah, but first when the children were walking like down the path, they hear this loud wailing siren, and they're drawn to it. And when they find it, there's a no, I don't want to run into that.
Okay, so even like just a physical appearance, it has the same spade.
Yeah, that's the thing. The spade-shaped head, like the orange and red colorations, like almost like a tunic.
Yeah, it colors right. It was a green and
red.
Green and red, which is also the physical description used for Flatwood's monster.
Yeah. Glowing, roundish, triangular eyes.
Glowing eyes. And
being very mechanical.
Yeah, which is very, very fascinating. So let me tie this in.
But if you look at it, though, the way the children were lured to this area, they heard this wailing sound, but only, according to them, only they could hear it. So there was a construction crew not far off. Like the kids could see the men working on whatever this was during the sighting, but the men couldn't see this clown figure. They couldn't hear the wailing. They couldn't even see the children during the sighting. So it really plays into a lot of Fae stuff when you look at the United Kingdom.
Right.
That he was first spotted under a bridge, like his hand came up out of the bridge. That's how they saw him.
He was dabbling in the water, if I'm not mistaken, right? Which is very fairy-esque, which we talked about a little bit in the last episode, The Fairy Gods of Ireland. So if you haven't listened to that, check that out. But I've got a quote here that I read in that episode from W.B. Yeats in his Irish Folk and Fairy Tale. So this is tying in again mythologically. He's got a section here. It was on the Tuatha De Danann, which were the gods of Ireland. And he says, are they the gods of the earth? And you're going to see how this is related here with the Sandown Clown. Are they the gods of the earth? Perhaps many poets and all mystic and occult writers in all ages and countries have declared that behind the visible are chains on chains of conscious beings who are not from heaven but of the earth, who are not inherent from, who have no inherent form, but change according to their whim, or the mind that sees them. You cannot lift your hand without influencing or being influenced by hordes. The visible world is merely their skin. So there's this idea here of these, Tuatha De Danann, fairies, and not just that, but let's expand it to what we're talking about here with Flatwood's monster and the Sandown Clown. There's these beings that have these similarities, but they have these little differences too, and it seems like that they manifest themselves in a way that people perhaps understand. Like people have their own names for them, their own understandings of what they are. But like, make no mistake about it, like these seem to be beings that are the same. They have the same characteristics, even down to the same descriptions. So it's fascinating here. Again, people have been encountering these same things for a very long time in various places. Right.
And even with the episode we done on abduction phenomena, where we link abduction phenomena with Fae abductions and things like that. The father of the kids.
Well, even things with like fairy lights. Yeah,
same thing. It's when you look at Fae phenomena, UFOs, anything like that. There's so much overlap. It's common source.
Yeah.
But the dad actually, when he heard the story, even though she said it was a ghost, he called a UFO investigative group. Like he reported it as a UFO sighting instead of it being like a spirit or something. So he even saw the similarities even then with somebody who's not really aware of that sort of pattern.
Why do you guys think that this being that has fairy elements also manifested itself in a mechanical way in Flatwoods and in the UK? I have a theory, but I just want to see if y'all.
It's the industrial age. It's the age of the machine.
There you go.
I was.
It's a mask of the phenomena.
Yeah, something very similar. That's maybe that's how it was received because that's what our brains go to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I thought about it this way. The lens that we have for most of this stuff that would have been considered mythological, and I don't mean mythological in the sense that it's fake. I mean just myth is just a story that gives meaningful answers to tough questions.
Right.
So perhaps it's a skin that we're familiar with because we think of the category we have is UFOs and machine. and craft. And so perhaps, like Yates is saying here, it's the world is its skin. Like it's manifesting itself according to the categories that the mind has.
That's very common with the paranormal. You go into a location and the phenomena seems to manifest according to the perceptions of the people actually experiencing and witnessing the activity. So you could go in there and it meets your expectations of what you think this thing should look like. Mm-hmm. So if you're there and you're expecting to see a UFO, an alien, the phenomenon is going to meet that lens and manifest in that way. If you go in there expecting to see a Bigfoot or a woman in white, like it dons that mask according to your perceptions.
Yeah. It almost, in some ways, reminds me of the show Midnight Mass, where we did a chinwag about that. Gosh, it's been over a year ago now. Where, you've got this story of this priest. He's out, on the road to, I can't remember where he was going. It was where the Apostle Paul was. But anyway, and he encounters the vampire there, but he sees it, he interprets it as an angel.
As an angel, yeah.
And that's the category that he has for this kind of being, which, so it's very similar if you've seen the show. So good practical example of that.
It is. It's good.
All right, guys, I'm going to let y'all choose the next ones. I wanted to start us off with those two. Y'all, this is y'all's wheelhouse. I'm going to weave this stuff in my own way.
All right, we've knocked out probably the top two, most common.
And some others by extension.
And some others by extension, but there's a ton of others that people might not be familiar with.
Well, let's hit them. Let's talk about them.
Can I throw one in that is
please do
way out there?
Please do.
Please do it.
It's actually European, and it's going to bring it back to West Virginia.
Okay.
I'm here for it. Let's do it.
In Beckley, West Virginia, there is an antique shop. Okay, I won't give the name unless you want me to, but the curator of this shop happens to own, I guess you'd say, a cryptid creature that is very much alive and stays in the shop.
Okay, don't give out this shop's name because I'm going to have to go get it. Nobody's going to have to go get it but me.
It's called an Ovanik.
An Ovanik? I've never heard of that.
It's a German cryptid.
Okay.
Kind of like an elf kind of weird creature. It's about the size of a cat, looks cat-like, very cat-like, but with hands more like a monkey. Rounder eyes.
Yeah.
Kind of devilish.
That feline aspect to spirits like that is very fey, like the Tinker spirits you see in the United. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And I had a guy on my show, actually. I forget. I cannot tell you episode or whatever, but we got into this discussion. He's just a paranormal researcher. He came on the show. He talked about experiences, ghost hunting, and then he's just like, oh, by the way. And he's witnessed this creature in this guy's shop. He goes into the back, looks into a mirror. He sees it through the mirror behind him.
Wow.
Turns around, watches it jump down, run underneath this buffet in this antique store. Followed it back into an office. It pops up out of a box. And he's swearing on everything that he's actually witnessed this cryptid creature called the Ovanik.
Wow. Yeah, man.
Where can I get one? Is the first thing that I want to know.
Yeah, maybe
right
we'll
off the
talk
bat.
off
we need to make a trip.
That's enough to get us back to West Virginia.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a crazy one.
And you say it's
Beckley.
Germanic.
Yes.
That's interesting.
You can look him up.
Given talking about Helvetia and the weirdness that the Germanic people brought to the area when they settled around here. So it's interesting.
If anybody wants to look him up, Ovanik is Ovinnik.
Ovanik. Okay.
So it's a weird one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, your turn.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go find this dude.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Oh gosh, what do you want to get into now?
Do whatever one you want. Whatever one you want.
Do you want to get into what people would call the Wampus cat? The Wampus.
Please
or
do.
They probably know it more in West Virginia by just a Black Panther sighting.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, that'd be good.
Oh, you messaged me. Yes. So, I'll let you tell that because you even had today some reports of this Black Panther sighting.
Yeah, have reports of
this very morning.
Yes.
That's an interesting connection.
One of my former students and a current student came to me today with reports that they saw a Black Panther in the Hearts area here. So it's like 20 minutes away from here.
I have some experience with this too. I'll get into afterwards.
We'll be driving through Hearts on the way home.
They described it as almost waist high, or almost to the truck, at the truck door. Yellow round eyes that kind of glowed. They described the face, the jawline. They could see this creature. Did not get a good look at the tail. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
I was asking about the tail, but they said body shape, head shape. It was 100%. They saw a panther on the road.
You know, whenever I was growing up, one of the things that I was always told was, do not go out into the mountains alone because the black panther can get you.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, to me, that was just common knowledge growing up in West Virginia. And I remember, you know, being as a kid, being out in the yard and hearing described, or hearing what I would describe as a woman or a child like screaming in the mountains. Yeah. And, you know, I've been around bobcats and stuff. We've got bobcats in the, you know, Chief Logan Park and the, you know, and this wasn't quite the same.
No. Right.
But yeah, I have heard, I mean, that has been something that has just been a normal part of life in West Virginia.
It is normal.
It is here.
It's like, it's not even a cryptid to me.
Right.
But it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no doubt. And you see pictures like going around all the time on Facebook. People like, hey, check out that.
And it's actually a Native American principality. Like, it's an elemental spirit. The Wampus is.
Oh, so you're connecting it into mythology now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know,
Well, just look at things like the water panther in Point Pleasant, and you even look at the symbolism of the black jaguar in South American cultures. It's a guardian of the underworld, so it has a spiritual aspect associated with it, even across various cultures. So it's hard not to separate the two for me.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Ritchie, your turn. Go.
I thought that was my turn.
Well, you let Bo talk about it.
Oh, what do you want to talk about now? The sheep squatch.
Well, listen, I don't know sheep squatch. I know beef squatch. So
listen, I don't. To me, sheep squatch is close enough to like Bigfoot that I just kind of chalk it up to that.
Yeah,
but there's also some aspects about it. They describe it a lot with like it being whitish with red eyes.
Okay.
But you can also go into the West Virginia, the Appalachian white thing, and it's sort of the same.
Okay, so hence the name sheep squatch. It's in white.
It's white, has horns.
Okay, white with horns. Okay, that's fascinating. I've never heard of that one before. Kind of reminds
sort
me
of like Pan, but he's like the Hulk.
Like a white pan, white Yeti pan.
Yeah, white Yeti pan.
Also super big, white with horns, kind of like a Wendigo.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've heard of the Wendigo.
That's more like an antler than a horn, I guess. So.
Right.
If you know about the white things, I would love to hear more, because I've always just kind of brushed them off as, you know, misidentification.
Well, the white things are sort of West Virginia's take on almost forest shapeshifters, but they all share this commonality. Each manifestation tends to be white and have red eyes. So they've been spotted in the form of a dog with red eyes, or a deer with red eyes, or some kind of giant bird with red eyes, or these hulking creatures with their eyes glow in the dark in the forest. So it's really hard to kind of pinpoint it down when they just each time they're described they take a different form.
Right. That's why I've had a hard time with them. They're so many different shapes and sizes.
Well, this reminds me in some ways about Irish folklore with things like the changelings and the banshee, because you've got those things there that are very similar that take on different shapes, forms. Almost like people, things like that, like children, and then you've got, other stuff like the banshee that's very, very similar. So, like, this stuff seems to be everywhere in some ways. Everybody has their own version of it. Let's talk about the Hopkinsville goblins.
Before you get to that, what people would know probably the white thing better as is the Grafton monster or the Grafton beast.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, I know.
And if you played Fallout 76, is that what it is?
Yeah.
In West Virginia, that's actually in there alongside the Mothman and Flatwoods Monster.
Right.
Grafton Monster, he was like the size of a refrigerator.
Yeah, he was very boxy and bulky. And
4 foot wide, 8 foot tall, no head.
Yeah, they thought he was actually headless because of the way his head was said to have set down on his body. He had no neck.
Were up there and kind
he
of
was a monster. He was beef squatch.
Yeah, he was beefy, and his skin they said it had a seal-like texture.
June 16th, 1964. So around the same sort of high strangeness flap.
Yeah, a lot of stuff went down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you think it is?
Literally, it erupted from Roswell is associated with this flap. So it just literally went across the country, all this mass sightings of various...
Does that have anything to do with the, what's it called, the 80, the parallel?
38th parallel?
38th parallel.
is it 37th parallel? What is it? I can't remember which one it is.
38 runs through here.
Yeah, 38 does run through here. I'm wondering if there's any connection between that.
I don't know.
I don't either. Something we have to look into.
Yeah. We have the book. I don't know. Or did you send it home with me?
I sent it back with you.
You probably did.
It's gone forever now.
It's gone forever, but I think
opened a portal in your room and took it. I guarantee it.
I've got a lot more sketchy things in my room than that. I have a collection of like vintage occult objects I've gotten from my time in paranormal investigating 15 years. There's some sketchy things on the
Ritchie
shelves.
has a paranormal museum in his
Basically.
home. He's like the Warrens.
No.
So, all right. Well, let's talk about Hopkinsville.
Oh boy.
And the goblins there. And this is connected even into some of the recent.
And it is
stuff.
the 37th parallel.
37th parallel. Okay. All right. So, I mean, this connects in. I mean, this is even a modern thing that's kind of going on, like with Hellier, if anybody's watched that. I mean, that's how the entire case started off, was with.
Oh, there's an aspect of this case that really ties a lot of the high strangeness together. We'll get to it when you get to it, but.
Well, I mean, I don't have the numbers here in front of me, the dates, but I can.
The three-toed footprints that are associated with the Hopkinsville monster, the goblins. The Flatwoods monster was said to have three fingers. The Sandown Clown had 3 fingers, 3 toes. It's a very weird aspect that's tied to a lot of this high strangeness.
Yeah.
And don't demonics.
I was going to say, yes, we talked about the last thing. Even I've been scratched in the paranormal before, and it was in 3. So I always thought that, okay, it's theorized that they're mocking the Trinity and it's something like that. But it never occurred to me until recently, maybe that's what they have. They have 3 claws, 3 fingers. But yeah, that's definitely something that's tied to spiritual manifestations like that across the board.
Yeah, that is a majorly common thing. But if you were to check out the Hopkinsville Goblins case, it's also known as the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter, or the Kelly Green Man case. But basically, what it was is Hopkinsville, Kentucky. There was a group of people. It was August 21st, 1955.
Whoa, closer to Flatwoods.
Yeah, right after Flatwoods.
Yeah.
Right after Flatwoods. 5 adults and 7 children.
Little spacemen, too.
They arrived at a police station claiming that a small alien creatures from a spaceship were attacking their farmhouse, and that they had been holding them off with gunfire for nearly 4 hours.
As one does in Appalachia.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Again, not shocking.
You're not going to come and take our chickens. It's not happening.
You're spending the night fending off paranormal creatures.
I mean, it's just
from
normal.
taking your chickens. That's
normal.
what happens.
I mean, it's the same thing with the Black Panther, right?
That's right.
It's the same thing.
It's a Tuesday night in Appalachia.
just another.
That's how we do it.
But so basically, but they said that they were fending them off with gunfire for nearly 4 hours, and 2 of the adults, named Elmer Sutton, Sutton, West Virginia.
There you go.
West Virginia.
Synchronicity right there.
And Billy Ray Taylor claimed that they had been shooting at 12 to 15 short, dark figures who repeatedly popped up at the doorway or was peering into them through the windows. And so, the police, who were concerned about a possible gun battle between local citizens, so it was 4 city police, 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, 4 military police from the nearby U.S. Army Fort Campbell drove to the Sutton farmhouse located near the town of Kelly in Kentucky. And their search, apparently, allegedly, yielded nothing apart from evidence of gunfire and holes in the windows and door screens made by the firearms. But again, there are lots of talks about there being 3-toed footprints from them. Residents of the farmhouse, there were more people. One was named Glennie Lankford, and her children Lonnie, Carlton, and Mary, 2 sons from the previous marriage, and Elmer Sutton and John Charlie Sutton, and their wives Vera and Aline. So these were people who were there as well. And Aline's brother, whoopsie daisy, hold on a second here, I lost my place. They also claimed that the creatures were there. So it wasn't just the people who showed up at the police department.
Yeah.
These people claimed it as well. And They also claim, this is really interesting, that the creatures were returning at 3:30 in the morning, and so there's a connection to there with other paranormal phenomena that apparently happens in that
About
3 a.m.
Yep.
range, which is also referred to as the witching hour.
Yep.
Right? Which is again supposed to be a mockery of Christ.
Yep.
On the cross.
The miracle hour.
The miracle
3 p.m.
hour.
Yep.
Right. So that's a little bit about, and that's still yet a thing. I mean, if you watch that's how it starts.
Yes.
People are claiming, Dave Christie claims, writes an email claiming that they're dealing with goblins coming out of the caves and the coal mines in that area, and they're doing similar things. And so that's one that's still ongoing.
Making chirping noises, kind of like the Kellyville goblins did.
Yep. So the Hopkinsville Goblin.
There you go.
You guys got any more you want to throw out there? I know somebody mentioned the Snallygaster.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's one that's in Maryland. The Snallygaster is kind of like a pterodactyl type creature, I guess, with one eye, and its mouth either has tentacles coming out of it or like multiple
Like
tongues.
Cthulhu meets a biblically accurate angel.
Yeah.
It sounds like very Lovecraftian.
It sounds to me like somebody saw a crane with an octopus on the coast, freaked out. But it is what it is. This Snallygaster was the Snallygeist or something. It's another German folklore creature.
Sound very German.
And apparently, I think there was some kind of connection to alcohol. Are you all familiar with the story?
It's been a while since I've looked into it. But I know the Geist part of it, and it alludes to something spiritual because with poltergeist, it's like noisy spirit in German. So there's that aspect to it.
Yeah, I think it had. I don't see it right here. Yeah, it's right here. The Snallygaster's offspring surfaced around 1932. It was huge, the size of a dirigible, and had long octopus-like tentacles. After numerous sightings, the creature supposedly met its end when it drowned in a vat of moonshine. So
that Appalachian holy water right there.
Yes.
Kills the monster.
The fitting end to the
Snallygaster. I'm okay with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about this. Demon dogs.
Devil dogs.
Demon dogs. There's reports of that kind of stuff here in Logan.
If you toss away the Mountain Monsters episode of the Devil Dogs of Logan County.
Yeah. Nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Hilarious, but absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So, Devil Dogs actually came up in a recent venture we had, if you remember, Ritchie. I won't expand on the details of that, except in the uncut portion.
Yep.
But if you remember, we were in this place, and there was some painting on the thing that said the Devil Dogs were here.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of, I think I messaged Bo and asked him if he had any information on devil dogs in the area. But there's actually an old photo of a woman in Logan County with a devil dog. I think that I can't remember. You can look it up. It's there.
I'll check that out.
If you type in Logan County Devil Dog on the Facebook search, it'll be like one of the very first things that pops up.
Yeah.
It's like this huge, ginormous looking dog. But lots of reports with that, which in some way connects to things like werewolves and
the dog man.
And the dog man, right? Which, our comrade Tony Merkel and Ward Heine have done.
They did.
Was it the Hunt for the Dog Man? I can't remember.
They went to the LBL,
and
right?
They went. It was in Kentucky, right? They were in Kentucky,
Land Between the Lakes.
Which again, same as this geographical area. There is just something to it.
There have been several sightings of this. I hate to use the term dog man, but it's like it's a werewolf to me. But dog man creature on the road on the interstate between Charleston and Huntington.
Ooh.
There's been several sightings of that.
There are some interesting things in that area. Here's a theory that I have, and it's just a theory, so don't take it as gospel. I think that the way that Aracoma and Cornstalk were traveling from Logan to that area was via the Guyandot.
Yeah.
Because I was down in the library, it's been several months ago, and there was a local historian named Sig Olafson. He actually helped us. He's discovered a lot of stuff here, and I'll save some of that for there's actually a memorial to him in the Madison Public Library.
Really?
That has some of his stuff there. Yeah, you can go and see it. I actually have some pictures of it. But he was a local historian, and he was the head of the Boone Genealogical Society and the West Virginia Archaeological Society, which I'm also now a member of. And he also, whenever he passed away, he donated they donated his library to the library. And there's actually a section that they'll let you go in to check out. And I sat in there for about an hour and a half one day and was sifting through his library, and he had a history of Logan County. And I got a couple chapters deep into it, and from what I understand, there was a time when the Native Americans left this region, and then they came back because they considered it to be cursed.
Yep.
Which is really interesting. But apparently it was so treacherous to get here that you couldn't come over the mountains because there weren't any roads at this time. You had to use horse to come over the mountains. But the majority of the travel that happened here, from what I understand, was the Guyandotte. There's a lot of this is folklore.
Right.
There is a lot of theories on how it got the name Guyandotte. One is perhaps of Native American origin, which is the Wyandotte.
Yeah, the Wyandotte tribe.
Perhaps that's it. The French was actually over here, and they had maps of the area, and they had it as the Cyandotte on their maps. Also, there was a legend that there was a man who had an outpost on the river with the last name Guyan, which is tied to this region. And so apparently they've never found any evidence of that.
Right.
But that's another, they call it the Guyandotte for this guy. But regardless of how it got its name, that seemed to be the normal mode of travel into Logan County. My suspicion and my theory is this, that the Native Americans were using that river to travel to and from this place to the Huntington area, which can get you into Point Pleasant there with the Ohio and stuff like that connecting in, which could also explain why there is Native American settlements down the Guyandotte into Lincoln County, which is going to connect into Cabell County, and why you end up with things like the water panther, not the water panther stone, but the what's the stone down there, Ritchie?
In Salt Rock?
Yeah, in Salt Rock. The Salt Rock petroglyphs.
Yeah.
The Ogham?
Yeah. Well, the Ogham is over. We saw that.
Yeah, we went to that.
That's in Mingo County.
Mingo County. Yeah. That's over Laurel Lake.
Yeah.
Way out up in there.
But in Salt Rock, there's a petroglyph stone that has a carving that's they call it the Spaceman.
Yeah.
But it's a shaman. It's a crying shaman.
Yeah.
But on the side of it are the depictions of these natives with spears spearing this horned river serpent in the river.
Serpent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I gotta check that out.
Yes.
I gotta check that out.
It is. They are spearing a horned river serpent, which they associated with the river.
Yep.
I think about at a phenomenological level, the river is windy,
and it
kind of
goes
like
north.
And it's
Well, the horned river spirit's another elemental spirit, like a deity recognized by the natives. So, along with the Wampus.
Well, think about how this would work phenomenologically. The river floods. Yeah. This is that being exercising its dominion over you, and you're warring against that. So, it's kind of the bad part of the river personified or deified, I guess you could say. But my theory is that that's why you have things like that on the river, is because they were traveling it. Maybe perhaps to and from, or walking the banks one direction because the current would be tough. Right. But that's my theory, and how that's how I think the cornstalk ended. I mean, there's no way, I guess, to tell for sure, but that's my theory on how cornstalk ended up in Point Pleasant.
Yeah, and back to the devil dogs.
Yeah,
I associate those with a elemental spirit, a principality, the same way you would with like the Wampus, the Thunderbird, anything else. Because here, even in like European folklore, they have things like Black Shuck, and it's this dog that's seen, it's black with fiery eyes, and it's associated with electrical storms or omens of death, and sort of the paranormal in general. Mm-hmm. Like that's regarded as a fairy hound, so it's a guardian of liminal spaces and the in between. So
which is very akin to the fairies who. Yep. Reside in the fairy mounds, which are these portals to below, right?
So anywhere you have a place that's considered a window area, you have these manifestations of these devil dogs. Okay. So it makes sense that they were seen in and around the Point Pleasant area, in and around Logan, Same thing.
All right, guys, we've got time for one more. We're already over an hour.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so one more. And then we'll move to the uncut portion where we talk about some of the things that we've got coming up. We're going to talk about it with Bo. Bo may join us, who knows, on this excursion that we're going to be going on.
It's sounding good so far.
So, one more. Whoever wants to take a stab at it.
No, gosh.
Let's see. I'm looking at notes here.
Like, there's one that I don't really know if you count it as a cryptid.
Go after it.
It's that, do you remember the news articles I showed you of that mountain octopus? Did I ever show you that? It's an actual article from a newspaper in West Virginia. They even had a picture of it, and it was an octopus that was found in the waters.
Huh.
I think it was almost Blackwater Falls, the river up there in that area.
Really?
Like, there's a legend that the water is full of these mountain octopi kind of creatures, and that they grow to. Some of them grow in these caverns. Like, picture the being in the chasms in Lord of the Rings, like under Khazad-dûm, that giant watcher in the water, the tentacled monster. Like, it's allegedly this thing lives in underwater sort of salt caves in Appalachia.
Well, let's maybe wrap it up with this. Let's kind of tie some of this together. Okay? I mean, we've already connected in mythologically.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Like, let's think about it biblically. What can we think of these beings as being? Right? Are they angels? Are they demons? Are they something in between? Are they, what are they? Like, what do you guys, what's your take on that?
Coming from being a pagan formerly, they absolutely, in magic and the occult, they are elemental spirits. From my tradition growing up, that's what we believed about them.
Okay.
Like, even if you look into Bigfoot, any cryptid, you can see elements of spirituality and spiritual aspects.
Well, you see that a lot with UFO stuff too.
Exactly.
There's a major religious message with them.
So to me, one man's Bigfoot is another man's alien, is another man's fairy. To me, they have a commonality in this high strangeness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's you can. I think that you can probably kind of think of that as something that falls on the angelic hierarchy.
Yeah.
Whether that be an elemental spirit or a virtue or a higher type of being or something lower on the hierarchy, it's somewhere on there. And a lot of these beings are associated with the elements, and a lot of them have descriptions as being burning, lighting, angelic type beings, luminous
guardians of the forest, guardians of a particular element, the rivers,
right. And I think you can kind of think about them and classify them.
So next time you see Bigfoot, board a flying saucer and head off. That's he's an elemental spirit right there.
Getting in there with the cherubim on their flaming chariots.
There you go.
So good deal. Okay, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bo.
Absolutely.
We are going to now move to the uncut section of today's episode where we're going to talk about some plans that we got coming up with the new project that we're going to be releasing a teaser for here. Ritchie, do you got a date on that when we're releasing it?
Our hand has been forced, so we have to release it this week. So
our hand has been forced because our colleague Ward Heine has already been on a podcast talking about it, and that drops later this month before we were going to do the episode with Ward releasing.
I believe the 18th, and they literally have the unlisted trailer linked in the show. So
so we've got to
get on the ball with it.
We've got to get on the ball. So if you want to hear about that, you need to head on over to Patreon. Head on over to www.patreon.com/Sword and Staff Order for just $5 a month. You can hear this uncut conversation that we're about to have with Bo. You're going to hear the details of it. You're going to hear some of the plans that we got coming up, and you're going to get access to that trailer first before anybody else does. It will drop on our Patreon before it drops anywhere else. You guys will have it first, and we're also going to give Bo a copy of that podcast as well with the uncut portion. So if he wants to drop it to his community, he can do that too.
Absolutely.
Whatever he wants to do. And so if you guys don't have anything else, we'll move on to the uncut section.
Let's go.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this week's edition of the Sword and Staff. And we'll see you on the other side.
See you then.
See you. All right. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sword and Staff Uncut. Jeez, cue the sword noise. And on today's Uncut edition for you guys, we are going to be talking about our upcoming project. Drum roll, please. Shadow Appalachia.
Name dropped it, did you?
Name dropped it. I did. I mean, they're going to find it out. They're going to figure it out. Anyway, they're going to figure it out from Tony Merkel.
I was going to say, Tony is going to drop it before we do, so we've got to get on with it.
Yeah, so this is the new project we've been working on. We've been working on it for a while. We still got a lot more to work on.
Been working on the concept for 2 years.
Yeah.
Working on filming it for a little over a year and a half.
Yeah. Wow. And so there's going to be clips of us in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. There's going to be clips of us in Logan. In various places in Logan. And
out of all the shocking threads we're going to explore in that documentary or that docuseries, how shocked are the fans going to be to see you full beard in half the show, and then, no beard the rest?
Oh, they're going to be very shocked. They're like, "Hey, who's that guy?"
Who's that guy?
Yeah. So I started working for the sheriff's department, and having a beard with the sheriff's department is a no-go. So they made me shave it, which is kind of funny. You would think that you look a lot tougher with a beard than without. You look like a 13-year-old. So, but I digress. So anyway, but let's talk about. Okay, so Ritchie, when are we dropping the trailer to the patrons? It's a teaser, more than a trailer. But when are we going to be dropping that?
I was in discussion with you about that. So anytime before the 18th. So probably on the heels of this episode right here. So probably within the week.
Okay. All right. And let's talk about the idea of this. What is it about? Right. I'll let you take a stab at that.
Well,
we wrapped up Dark Holler.
Yeah, we did.
We wrapped up Dark Holler, and it really focused in on a particular family in a particular place who had experienced very particular things. Now we want to expand out from this to the greater Appalachian area, looking at it.
Really, at the beginning of Dark Holler was initially supposed to be a one-off documentary, and Shadow Appalachia was supposed to be the docuseries that followed that. But the more we dug into Dark Holler, the more it expanded out and sort of became a docuseries. Right. And Shadow Appalachia got pushed to the back there. But it was meant to focus in on Kristen, Dark Holler was, and her story, and then zoom out and show Appalachian High Strange, just the principality she was in contact with, on a grand scale across all of Appalachia.
Okay, so that's what we're aiming at with this. It is kind of exposing this principality that Kristen was in contact with in Dark Holler, but showing it at work in the greater Appalachian
that we believe is the sort of source cue for any and all high strangeness in the area.
Yes, we are going to make the case that all of the paranormal phenomena happening in the Appalachian region is emanating from this being.
Yep.
And that goes for things like the Mothman, that goes for things like the Flatwoods Monster, that goes for all of that kind of stuff. That even goes down to your poltergeist activity.
Yep.
So there's going to be a lot of that in this docuseries, I guess you could call it.
Yep.
So
far the plan is...
it's taking us some weird places we never expected to be.
5 episodes in season 1, and we're planning 3 seasons right now at sort of starting off.
Yeah. Right.
So we'll see where it goes from there. But
let's talk about one of those weird places that it's taking us, which is a lost serpent mound in Logan County, which we told Bo about this before we got on here. Maybe Bo joins us on that trip. That's up to Bo.
I would love to. Let's hope it works.
Absolutely better be there.
I hope it works out.
So let's talk about the serpent mound a little bit, and why we're going up there, and why it fits into some of this stuff, and why people should be interested.
Yeah, we're making a whole weekend of it.
Yeah, we are.
Renting an Airbnb, so everybody has a place to crash if needed. So
yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Okay, well, all right, so let's talk about this. We discovered, as we were doing some digging for Shadow Appalachia, that there was a lost serpent mound in Logan County in our backyard that nobody knows about. It was actually cataloged in the 1970s.
I think we were researching the Horned River Spirit and the petroglyphs, and all of a sudden that came up. Like it was a serpent effigy in the area.
The way that it came up was there is a local historian, I won't mention his name, because he's not asked to be named, but there was a local historian who posted about it. And that was how I ended up. But we were researching the Horned River Serpent on the Salt Rock petroglyphs at the time, and that just happened to synchronistically land in the lap at this exact same time. And I was like, whoa, there is a serpent mound in Logan. And we ended up researching it, and like it's literally just right down the road from us, up on top of a ridge line. And it was cataloged in 1970, and it's not been touched since. There's been no research done on it, and people in the area don't even know that it exists. There's no historical marker for it. Like, it's literally lost.
Yep.
And these things are very rare, mind you. Obviously, if you're listening in at this point, you're probably a nerd, and you know that there's the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, in Adams County, and there's another kind of semi-lost one in Ashland, Kentucky, overlooking the Big Sandy River, which maybe we'll go out to that one and look for it at some point. Who knows? But there is one
about
here
season 2.
Yeah, maybe. But here's the reason. I want to talk about some of the significance that we think is going on with it.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of zoom out a little bit and talk about why this is important to Shadow Appalachia. So, recently I've been reading about the Serpent Mound, the Great Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. And here's the deal. I'm theorizing as of right now. Now, this is just theory until we get out there and we start testing things. My theory is that there is much overlap with these two serpent mounds. There may be overlap with the one in Ashland as well. I don't know that yet. That's another adventure.
Thematically, based on what we've seen so far, there almost has to be.
Okay. Well, so I have Graham Hancock's book called America Before: The Key to the Earth's Lost Civilization. A lot of people like Graham Hancock, a lot of people don't. But he's got some interesting facts here about the Serpent Mound that's common knowledge in here. And so here's some of the things about the Serpent Mound that are fascinating. Number one, it is in a naturally anomalous area. And this area that it's in is known for things like intense magnetic anomalies, gravitational anomalies, and underwater caverns and streams and sinkholes and things like that. And the reason why is because Serpent Mound in Adams County is actually situated in a crater from a meteor impact that happened a long time ago, probably around 12,000 years ago, somewhere like that. And it actually sits, guys, on a ridgeline in Adams County. Here is some LiDAR scans. Ward was actually at the Great Serpent Mound here recently, and he drove through the crater, and he didn't even know it. So you can see here on these LiDAR scans, it sits here on the ridge line, and you can see here there's this major, it looks like a hill here. That's actually the impact crater. That's actually where the meteor hit. And so this has caused the area to have many anomalies, okay? And actually, Native American people were apparently drawn to this area. They were able to sense this. And it said that they viewed this area as an unusual transitional area that was considered to be sacred. They actually almost considered it to be a supernatural gateway or portal between the celestial upper world and underworld. And so that's an interesting fact about it. Another thing here, too, is that I'm showing you all this. The Serpent Mound is aligned with the cardinal directions in a very certain way. Actually, if you were to go to the Serpent Mound on the summer solstice, you would actually see the setting sun going down directly in front of the mouth of the Serpent Mound, as though it was devouring the sun. This is actually fairly common in the ancient world. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not rare. It is, but a lot of the great works in the ancient world are structured this way. So, for example, Stonehenge. Stonehenge was actually that's actually been added on to. Some of those stones there were naturally occurring, like what's called the Hill Stone and the Sarsen Stone, and this was an area that naturally interacted with natural phenomena like that. So, for example, if you were to go to Stonehenge on this, I think it's the solstices, you would see the sun set directly where the Hill Stone is at. And so what they did was they saw this as, the ancient people kind of viewed this as a place where heaven and earth overlapped, right? You see the natural overlapping with the supernatural, right? And so they considered it to be sacred spaces. And so what they did was they added on to them and made them sacred ritual places. So you see that with Stonehenge. Stonehenge, the stones that are there now, those monolithic stones, they are not natural. They were actually drugged, I think it was from like 18 miles away from another county to there. And the reason why is because it naturally was a place that interacted with this natural phenomenon. You got similar things with the Sphinx in Egypt. It also aligns, I think it's either with the equinox or the solstice, I can't remember. And over time they carved it to look like a lion with a cherubim type being with the face of a man, that kind of thing with the pharaoh. So, same thing has happened with Serpent Mound in Ohio. Okay. Also, there was a altar that used to be there at the head region where the Serpent Mound was at, and they used to do rituals there as well.
I was going to say, you should get into what you found in the book, literally just today. We posed these same questions to Josh in a video call with Ward the other day, and
I had
the answer was right in front of him the whole time.
Yeah, so I have a book here. It's called Ages of the Giants, A Cultural History of the Tall Ones in Prehistoric America. And it actually it's basically a survey of Native American, Adena, Hopewell, giant stuff all up the East Coast. And it actually mentions the mound in Logan. And here's what it says. And we'll get into some of the significance of this. One of the least known and tragically understudied Adena structures in West Virginia, once occupied. It says once occupied. It's still there.
It's
still there. This historian actually went there recently, so we know it's still there. And I asked him about it. He said, yes, it's still there.
To the mound in Chapmanville?
The mound up on Logan on the ridge line.
There's one. There's just an actual burial mound in Chapmanville.
Wait, I don't know about this.
I don't know about this either.
There is. There's a house right at it. It's a yellow house. Same historian told me where it's at.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to talk about
it.
Yep. All right, so it says it occupied a ridgeline near the town of Omar in Logan County. That's just down the road here. The site was a stone serpent mound described as similar in form to the serpent mounds found in Kentucky. That's the other lost one in Boyd County. And Ohio, that's the Great Serpent Mound, by surveyor Gary Wilkins in 1979. So Gary Wilkins and Sig Olson, who is a local historian, they went and cataloged it in 79. It's been forgotten since then. No one's been there since. The serpent was oriented to the north, the head consisting of an oval ring of stone with a rectangular flat rock at the center. Also, it was there was a natural section that was around 51 feet in length, and then they added on to it to make it 80 feet in length. Now, here's why that's significant. Because that fits the pattern of other ancient sites.
Let me drop this book.
Let me just drop this book.
Let me drop this knowledge on you here.
That fits the pattern of other structures, like the Great Serpent Mound and Stonehenge and the Sphinx and stuff like that. So here's my theory, and we're going to have to wait to test it. We were asking the question, how is this thing aligned in Logan County? Is it aligned towards the north? Because if it is, odds are it is probably also aligned towards the summer solstice. I'm willing to bet money right now that the summer solstice sets directly where the head region's at. It also appears that there could be an altar on the head because it mentions a rectangular stone that's different in the head region. Altars are rectangular. They represent the four corners of the earth. Right, and you sacrifice something on it, so it's kind of a microcosm. Also, it fits the pattern. It's been built onto. Usually, when something's been built onto like this, it's because it was a natural area that interacted with natural phenomena, and they viewed it as sacred, so they accentuate it and make it a ritual spot. My bet is that is what is going on with this serpent mound.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind.
So, also, we did some research, and guess what? There is a map that you can go to that's put out by the U.S. government that tells you about gravitational anomalies. And this area also falls in a heavy area known for gravitational anomalies in Logan County.
Literally pegs the graph when it comes to the scale.
Literally has much overlap as of right now that we have seen from just the research that we've done. So, we're going to go out and test it. Now, here's how it fits in. Okay? So, we're zooming out. We're talking about this principality that's over the area. These people were worshiping this principality. We've talked about that a little bit in Dark Holler stuff. We've talked about that in some of the Native American principality stuff we've talked about on here. And so we're going to be diving deeper into that. And you guys are going to get the first look before anybody else does. And so, Ritchie, you got anything you want to add to that? Bo, you got anything you want to add to it?
I'm just excited about all this.
Bo is over here just like digging into it.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find my conversation with said historian.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pumped about it. I hope I can make it out there with you guys for this Serpent Mound expedition, we'll call it. I just appreciate being brought in on all this.
Even if you have to work, Josh has to work that day. It's late enough in the evening. You should be able to make it.
Well, he might have other things going on too.
I should.
So here's why I think that it's significant. It connects into the Shadow Appalachian Dark Holler stuff at a spiritual level, but there's also a historical thing here too that we're aiming at. This is an area that's been forgotten. This is a structure that has been forgotten, an earthwork that has been forgotten. There's not even a historical marker. So we're hoping that if we can go out and prove these things through testing, that we can make the case that, hey, you have something that is constructed in a similar way to the Great Serpent Mound and other things like Stonehenge, the Sphinx in your own backyard, and nobody knows about it.
Yeah, even apart from the paranormal significance, like investigating and documenting any phenomena, any activity, just to be able to have the historic, precedence back for it, just to have it protected. That's
Well, so this documentary that we're working on now may not just have great spiritual significance, but maybe even great historical significance for our region. And it's exciting. Like to think that there's something on the level of a Stonehenge or a Great Serpent Mound or a Sphinx or something like that in your own backyard and nobody knows about it. You get to be the people who explore it and test these things. That's exciting stuff. And so you guys are going to be along for the ride. You guys are going to get to know about this stuff before anybody else does. And you may get to play a part in something that maybe not, maybe we're wrong, but maybe turning out to be historical. And you're going to know about it before anybody else does. And so we hope you guys are excited about that. And so be on the lookout. There's going to be updates for this stuff coming.
Oh, absolutely. Behind the scenes videos, more trailers, little mini-sodes and vlogs. So a lot more detail coming.
Yep. And Bo is welcome to be on that adventure as well to share with his people too. That helps get it out to more people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he gets to be a part of it too. And so we hope you guys are excited about that. Bo, we know you're excited about it.
Absolutely.
And so when's the expedition date, Ritchie? Go ahead.
It is October 21st.
October 21st. Okay. And so after October 21st, there's going to be content dropping on here, and the trailer's going to drop before then.
Yeah.
But maybe there's going to be some new trailers coming here soon that actually features some of this.
Yeah, this first trailer we got is sort of a concept trailer. It's a first look. But the first main trailer comes at the release of Ward's episode.
Right.
So
good deal. All right. Well, you guys got anything else for this uncut edition?
Tons, but no time.
Tons, but no time. Yep. Yeah. We're very pressed.
We're cutting it close.
We are. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to this week's uncut edition of the Sword and Staff. We thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
See you then.